Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to Joyful Living. Welcome to Run Day Monday, and I'm so excited about this video in particular as I share with you my actual and oh so practical schedule for a Run Disney Race Day, and I'm really glad that you're here. So the reality of a Run Disney Race weekend is kind of its own animal. It is different than any other big race that you're going to run. It has its own logistics. You know, you're talking about a lot of people at a lot of hotels, and Run Disney races have kind of their own personality and therefore require their own set of special planning. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. Now, I want to make sure you understand that I have learned more from my mistakes than I have from my successes. So I am by no means sharing with you that I always do this perfect, but I am pretty confident that I can give you a plan that might work for you, and I'm very confident I'm giving you the plan that works for me because it's what I intend on doing when I run the 10K coming up here in just 3 weeks, when I run the Princess Fairy Tale Challenge in February, and then again when I run the Star Wars Half Marathon in April. So in my 11 years of running Disney, here is the main schedule that I have settled into that works really well for me. Now, some of these times will change depending on what time the race starts. Some of the races start as early as 5 a.m. in the case of the marathon this year, and some of the races start as late as 6 a.m. in the case of, I think, the 5K and the 10K for marathon weekend, both start at 6 a.m. So you can kind of, shift these times depending on the start time of the particular race that you're doing. But I'm going to actually start us the night before. No matter what time the Run Disney race that you're running starts, there's one thing you need to know. You have a very early start to your day. And because of that, I am most likely to eat my big kind of carb-loading dinner at around 4 o'clock the day before. Now, some of you are going, 4 o'clock, isn't that really like late lunch? Sure, call it late lunch if you want, but I'm going to have a big substantial meal no later than 4 p.m. And here's why. If you eat a big heavy meal at your normal time, maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, what can happen, and what has happened to me, is that food has actually not had a chance to digest, and it is not super fun to run 6 miles or 13 miles or 26.2 miles with a huge dinner sloshing around in your stomach. So I have been much happier, especially as a runner who tends to have stomach issues, if I eat my main meal the night before around 4 o'clock. Now, a word on that as far as carb loading. Although I will have a few more carbs than normal, I am not eating a massive pasta dinner. In fact, I'm not eating a massive dinner at all. I'm pretty much eating what I normally would eat, although I am going to avoid a lot of vegetables. I'm probably not going to have a salad, anything that might have a tendency to cause me issues the next day. So my favorite is kind of very simple. White rice, maybe some fish. Try not to have any alcohol. I know that can be tricky. The worst Star Wars race I've ever run was Sarah and I went to California Grill once before the race, and we had we didn't mean to, but they ended up doing like a wine tasting with us, and we drank way too much, and it made for a miserable race the next day. So, maybe one glass if that's what you normally do before a long run, but you don't want to be drinking a lot the night before. Of course, you're going to want to be hydrating that whole day, and that doesn't change at the meal. I really do try to stick with just water because I want my body to feel really good and as light as possible as I'm out on that race course. 7 p.m. the night before, I am back in my hotel room. Now, I know you're at Disney, and there are a lot of you that will go out and party late into the evening, and you won't sleep, and you'll get up and run your best race, and I commend you. This girl cannot do that. So by 7 o'clock, I want to be back in my hotel room. I want to be laying out all of my clothes, and we'll talk more about that in a future video, but I'm going to lay out flat Jen, right? So I'm going to make sure I have my race bib, I have my noon hydration tablets, my shoes, my socks, my running bra, my top, my bottom, my hat. Everything is laid out down to my underwear so that when I wake up the next morning, I don't have to think. I can just do. So everything is going to be ready to go. Then at 8 o'clock, lights out. Now, some of you, this will not work. I love to sleep. I never have trouble sleeping, and 8 o'clock is actually not that early for me. Have been known to go to bed at 9:30 here at home. So although I may not fall asleep at 8 o'clock, I'm at least in bed, feet up, dimming the lights. You may want to watch a movie or read a book or something like that, but at least be off your feet. I have gotten into kind of a routine now where I usually can fall asleep by about 8:30 or 9. So it still doesn't give me a full night's sleep, but I do tend to get a good 4 or 5 hours. But I want to make sure you know, if you don't sleep at all, it is really okay. Most of us don't get a good night's sleep. A lot of people don't sleep at all before the race. So as long as you're off your feet, as long as you're getting some rest, just let it go, because I do think there is a psychological effect where you lay there and you're stressed out because you're not sleeping. Just see what happens. Do the best you can. All right, now on to the big day. Are you ready? If the race starts at 5:30 a.m., which is typically the case, like I said, except for the marathon this year, for the longer races, I am setting my alarm for 2:30 in the morning. That's right. 2:30 in the morning, and here's why. The buses will start at 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. depending on the year. I make it a goal to be on a bus no later than 3:30. Sometimes it's 3:45. Here's why this is so vitally important. And if it is your first Run Disney event, you're sitting there doing the math in your head and you're thinking, this race doesn't start until 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock. Why in the name of heaven do I need to be on a bus by 3:30 in the morning? Here's why. I want you to think about the thousands upon thousands of runners that need to get to that race start. And Disney is doing the best they can to get everybody where they need to go. The one time that I waited, now Disney, by the way, will tell you typically you need to be on the bus by 4. They will say definitively, if you're not on a bus by 4 a.m., we're not going to guarantee that you're going to get there to the start of the race. One time, last year's half marathon, I got on a bus at 4 a.m. We were stuck in horrific traffic. I had paid for Race Retreat and I was very unhappy because it took almost an hour and 10 minutes for us to finally get there. And y'all, I got off that bus and I was racing to the Corrals. For the half marathon and for the Princess and for the full marathon, there's a very long walk from where the starting area is to where the Corrals are. And I was basically booking. I have never been that late. I got into my corral and we took off maybe 10 minutes later and I was in corral D as in David. So it stressed me out so much, and I swore to myself I would never put myself in that position again. So personally, if the buses start at 3, I'm on a bus by 3:30. If the buses start at 3:30, I'm going to try to be on a bus at 3:30 or 3:45. I would always rather be too early than running to my corral. Okay, so that is why I'm up at 2:30. The other reason I'm up at 2:30, and for this I'm presuming that I'm getting on a bus at 3:30, so about an hour before you plan on getting on your bus, is I want to give my body an opportunity to wake up. And I won't go into detail, but I'm sure you can imagine what I'm talking about. I want my body to do all the things my body needs to do in the morning in order to feel its best self. So we're going to have coffee. We're going to have a small breakfast. I'm also going to pack some food with me. And we're going to just have a nice start to the day. Okay, so let's talk really briefly about throwaway clothes, because depending on what corral you're in, you could be waiting around in the corrals for anywhere from 20 minutes to well over an hour. And there's also, for most of the races, half marathon and longer, a very long walk to get out to the corrals in the first place. So having a light layer, maybe a little blanket, really check the forecast here and don't just think about what you're going to wear to run, but what would you feel comfortable standing around in that weather. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I have my throwaway clothes before we leave the hotel room, and also my drop bag. Now, what can go in your drop bag? I talked a little bit about this in the Q&A video I did, but this is anything you're going to want for after the race. So if there's a particular hydration you like, if you might want to pack another jacket in there, because I do tend to get very chilled after races. Sometimes I'll put a Mylar blanket maybe that I've kept from another race. Maybe if there's a particular, like I'll have more noon hydration tabs, if there's a particular kind of drink you want, any of those things can go in your drop bag. And I said this last week as well, but it bears repeating. Remember that when you finish the race, you still have a ways to go before you're back at your hotel room. So really think through, and again, I hope you're doing this the night before, what do I want to make sure is in that drop bag and ready to go? I will also, as I said earlier, take a little bit more food with me, usually maybe a yogurt or a banana or something. Again, just to get a little bit more in my stomach before we actually start running. This is more true for a half marathon or a marathon than say for a 5K or a 10K, because those are over fairly fast. You don't really need to worry about nutrition with, those length of races. So there you go. So we're walking out of the hotel room. Now, when I say I'm on a bus between 3:30 and 3:45, that doesn't mean I'm leaving my hotel room between 3:30 and 3:45, okay? You have to allow time to get in the elevator and go down. Now, this is where the magic for me really starts, because you're leaving your room, especially if you're doing this as a solo trip, or maybe you're not traveling with anyone that's doing the race with you, and you're thinking, it's cold, dark 30, I'm all by myself, I'm nervous about this race, I'm not sure if I have everything I need, and I'm just feeling alone in the universe. Well, then you're going to walk towards that bus, and guess what? You're going to be met with dozens of other runners that are at your same hotel that are all as nervous and excited as you are. Some of them will be talkative, some of them won't be talking at all, but you will definitely not be alone. And that for me is when the magic really starts. Once I get on that bus and all the other runners are there with their drop bags, and everybody is kind of running the spectrum from a little nervous to really nervous, and it is just such a great moment for me. And then we're going to get on our bus. We're going to head to the starting area. Now, what time you get there completely depends on the bus transportation. But if you're me, you're getting there early, you're going to have probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes to maybe even an hour in the starting area. What you'll find here are items for sale. They'll have coffee. They usually have somebody selling bagels or donuts in case you have forgotten that. You will find all of the other runners. This is a great time to meet up with people. You'll find a DJ. You'll find lots of fun music. You'll find characters. Now, if there's a particular character you want to get a picture with, I would get in line as soon as you get there, because those lines do tend to get long and they will close them. And this is particularly true for Sarah and I when we do Star Wars. But if you know there's a character you want, make that your priority. And the other thing you're going to do while you're waiting is you're going to get in line for the porta potties. Now, depending on the race, oftentimes they will also have porta potties at the actual starting corrals as well as in the staging area. I will typically go twice, and even if I don't feel like I have to, I'm going to get in line, because those lines can take forever, and Disney does a really good job, and there's always a lot of porta potties, but I always just go ahead and get in line. Other bonus there is I like to go before a lot of other runners have been in those porta potties, for obvious reasons. This is also why it's a great idea to pack a little wet wipe. I just like to kind of clean things up because it's dark and you can't see, and there's no harm in that. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I will typically go again if the starting corral is that long walk away from the staging area before we actually start the race. And that's kind of how I'll spend my time while we're waiting around. It goes very quickly. Again, if you've brought your garbage bag, you can always sit on the ground there in the staging area. I kind of like to use this as an opportunity to just, again, to wake up. Maybe you want to, involve yourself with some of the little dance things that are going on, but just to get your energy pumped up, maybe have a little bit more coffee. All right, now we're in our corrals, and the energy in the corrals is infectious. If you are by yourself, this is a great time to start conversations with other runners. If you're with a group, this is a great time to be looking for a runner that looks like a nervous Nelly and like she's going to throw up, or he. And if they don't want to talk to you, they won't, but it's never a bad idea to say, is this your first Run Disney race, or is this your first half marathon, or whatever the case may be. I have had some of the most delightful conversations with other runners in the corrals. We will, of course, before we start, there will be a moment of silence. There will be the national anthem. There will be all kinds of wonderful tributes to the different charities that are being supported in the race. And it's just all of us together, and there's just really nothing like it. I love right before a race starts for Run Disney. And then before you know it, you're going to be out on that course, and you're going to be running your race. Now, I will tell you, the first few miles are a little hard, especially because it's really dark and you're on the freeways typically, and they don't usually have that many characters and things in those first few miles. But this, to me, is the time for gratitude, to just stop for a second and think about what you're doing. Don't think about all the miles that are ahead of you. Just think about what it took to get you to this moment in time, running this race in the most magical place on earth with some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I know that no matter how your training has gone, no matter how many obstacles you've had to overcome, you are going to have a great race, and it's something you're going to be proud of, and you're going to be able to share this story for years to come. What questions do you have? I know you have them. Put them in the comments below. If you have something you would add to my timeline, please let me know. And if you'll be down there for the Walt Disney World Marathon weekend, especially if you're running the 10K and you see me, please stop and say hi. I would love to meet you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. It's a few days before Christmas, so I hope you have a fabulous Christmas with your family, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.